Good evening. Raja, can you unmute yourself? Dr. Bala also.
Good evening, doctor. Good evening.
Good evening, doctor. Kaushik, can you put your video on and unmute yourself?
Yep, all set, Dr. PM.
How are you, Kaushik?
All well. How are you doing, sir? How are you doing?
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Thanks a lot for accepting this request.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. It's a very diverse audience. I'm really looking forward to presenting and interacting with the participants.
So good of you to say that. Actually, about 120 people are registered, but right now I see only 50 participants in the list. I think they'll start joining. So let's do the initial formalities. Then by the time you start, probably people will be there. Is it okay? Can we start?
Yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Good evening to all of you. A warm welcome from Tapams Group. A quick few seconds introduction about Tapams. Tapams is a 23 years young consulting company focusing mainly on turnaround management, CEO coaching, world-class manufacturing through lean, and OEM supply readiness, and also onto training. So these 5 verticals we are working, and recently we added digital transformation consulting. So we have a full-fledged setup on transforming companies into completely digital. So this is about us. So I head this company as a managing director, and we have 16 full-time consultants, with a cumulative experience of about 500 plus years. Already closer to 400,000 consulting hours, we have done in this 23 years. Worked for more than 30 kinds of industries. And we have office in 8 places in India, and we have an office in Dubai and Singapore and in Italy. My colleague from Italy also joined. Welcome, Enrico. Enrico, you are there?
Yes, thank you, and good evening to everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Enrico, for joining. Okay. So let's proceed with the program. I request Dr. Bala, CEO of Vision Unlimited, and also our strategic partner, to do his welcome address. Dr. Bala, please.
Good evening, one and all. Presenting this wonderful free webinar, which has been organized by Tapams Group and NIPM Madras chapter. In fact, I must say both are competing with each other in this COVID period. Tapams Group have done more than 50 programs online for various people, especially on turnaround management for the entrepreneurs and different kinds of programs. And the NIPM has been doing continuous programs without any gap for students, for their members and everybody. And this program, as you know, has been organized as a free webinar, titled as COVID-19 Impact on the Mobility Industry, Recovery and Growth Opportunities, by one of the most popular and able person. He's going to do the conversation with Dr. Meghanathan, who's the MD of the Tapams, Mr. Kaushik Madhavan. I honestly extend a very, very warm welcome to Mr. Kaushik Madhavan, who is the Vice President of Mobility, Frost & Sullivan as a mobility practice. As you know, the mobility industry has been unprecedented times with the effects of the 2019 slowdown, compounded by the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020. I did not say that. Everybody is aware. Although the automotive QM, OEMs and suppliers have reopened their plants and started manufacturing, there's been a market shift in customers' sentiments. This is expected to have a significant impact in buying, ownership, and usage behavior as the industries start limping back to normal. This talk looks at addressing the opportunities for growth and how the mobility industry stakeholders can come together to form a collaborative ecosystem, adopting new business models. In this program, we have people from different walks of life, and mostly from the manufacturing industries and also from the automotive industry. And we have a wonderful introduction which is going to be done by Raja, President of NIPM, about the speaker. Nevertheless, Mr. Kaushik Madhavan who is already here in front of you in the video. He has over 18 years of experience. So we are very, very happy to have him, in this panel discussion. And we are going to have a great insight in this webinar of an hour or so. A lot of interesting questions are in the offing. So I extend a very, very warm welcome to Dr. Meghnathan, to Kaushik Madhavan, the NIPM members headed by Mr. Raja, and various other people who have joined, either on an individual basis or sponsored by the organization. So I extend a very, very warm welcome. I wish the program a grand success. Thank you very much for the wonderful opportunity, Dr. Megha. Over to Dr. Megha.
Thanks, Dr. Bala. Thanks a lot for your wonderful welcome address. I request Mr. Raja to introduce the faculty. Raja is the Managing Director of Lead HR Services Private Limited and also the current President of NIPM Madras Chapter. Raja, can you please?
Yeah, thank you, Megha. Good evening, friends. It gives me a great pleasure and honor to welcome each and everyone for this interesting webinar on behalf of NIPM. And also I extend thanks to Dr. Megha for taking initiative in organizing this meeting. And give me a great pleasure and again welcome Mr. Kaushik Madhavan. Welcome, sir, for joining with us for this session.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So Kaushik did his engineering from RV College of Engineering, Bangalore, and did his MS in Automotive System Engineering in RWTH in Germany. And he started his career as a research assistant in a college where we did his MS. Then he moved to Frost & Sullivan. I think most of us know what this company is all about. For those who are not aware of it, I'll give just 1 minute, 1 second introduction. Frost & Sullivan is a business consulting firm involved in market research and analysis, growth strategy consulting, and corporate trading across multiple industries. It was established in a year back, 1961, headquartered at California, having 40 offices across the country. It is a background about what is Frost & Sullivan, where Mr. Kaushik heads the Vice President, Mobility Practices Division, South Asia, based at Chennai. He has more than 20 years of experience in automobile industry, especially in strategy consulting and market research. Specific, expertise in competitive intelligence and benchmarking, new market and entry diversification strategies, end consumer analysis and automotive technologies and consumer practicing behavior, strategic planning and technology benchmarking. And we can say he is very strong in automotive sector, particularly in powertrain, in passenger and commercial vehicles. And also he did a lot of work on alternative fuels, flex fuels, CNG, LPG, hybridization cars, electrification of vehicles. He has a lot of credential to it. Put it simply, he managed a powertrain at the global level within Frost & Sullivan, managed a global innovation center at Frost & Sullivan, and he worked with the senior management people in automobile industries. And he is a very enthusiastic columnist. He writes in ET, Auto League, and Economics Times. He is a well-known speaker and moderator, invited in many national and international forums by well-reputed forums, CII, AutoServe, CV Forum, and he writes regularly in Economics Times, Hindu Business Lines. These are the short profile, and it's very difficult to comprise in 2 minutes. So with these few words, I invite Kaushik for take over the session. We welcome you once again, Mr. Kaushik.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Meghnathan, Dr. Bala, and Mr. Raja. It's such a wonderful audience here. You all have decades and decades of experience. I feel like a newcomer in front of you. Don't get fooled by the gray hair. But nevertheless, it's a very, very exciting opportunity. Again, Dr. Meghnathan and I go back a few years, through one of my colleagues, senior colleagues, and his friends, who used to be working with us as a senior consultant. So thank you very much once again, Dr. Meghnad, for this. So let me try and
Pleasure.
share my screen.
Yeah, you can. You can. I already made you as a co-host. You can share it.
और पहले किधर जा
Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So thank you very much once again, sir. So, I mean, I think Dr. Bala and Mr. Raja mentioned during the beginning of their talk, the automotive industry has gone through some very, very tough times over the past, let's say 16 months, 16 to 18 months. 2019 wasn't a very good year for the automotive industry. If you have been following the industry, 2019 was about 18% down from 2018, right? And this year, it is going to be a further 17 to 18% down from 2019. So you can imagine the, the downward trend the automotive industry in India has faced. Now, this has been compounded by the fact that, unfortunately, COVID-19 pandemic has hit us all. It has affected the automotive industry in a variety of ways. The plants have shut down. People have been affected. The dealership community is shut. So I think it is going to take a while before the entire industry is going to be up and running, to its 2018 numbers. But nevertheless, we are expecting to see some green shoots, some recovery. Hopefully not immediately, but in the next couple of quarters at least. So what I'll do is maybe over the next, let's say 30 minutes, 35 minutes, I'll walk you through our perspective, Frost & Sullivan's perspective on the mobility industry, how COVID-19 has impacted the mobility industry, and what are the growth opportunities. So let me start with a few mega trends or mega themes, as we call it. Now, one of the key areas that we have seen a lot of investment from the OEMs is what we call as health, wellness, and well-being, right? So because of the existing COVID-19 situation, we are seeing a lot more OEMs, car manufacturers offering technologies such as ionizers, ozonizers, or air purifiers, which are becoming standard, which are going to become standard equipment within the vehicles, right? And then we are also seeing, technologies such as heart rate monitoring, blood pressure monitoring, body temperature monitoring systems, which are getting integrated into the cars, into the vehicles, right? So we will see, as a consequence of this, a convergence of, the automotive industry, the healthcare industry, the insurance industry as well, right? So we will see a lot more convergence going forward. So that's the key word. Today, whether you like it or not, we are in an increasingly connected. Our professional lives are connected with our personal lives. Our cars are becoming connected. I mean, take the example right now, right? We are all connected, from the comfort of our homes, right? 3, 4, 5 months ago, we would have never thought that, we will be sitting in front of each other virtually, talking, discussing, presenting. But the situation has made it possible right now. So, classic example is Zoom, the platform we are on now. If you have read the news articles lately, Zoom is currently valued at over $50 billion, right? That is more than the top 7 airlines combined in the US. So you can imagine the growth Zoom has seen. 5 months ago, 6 months ago, nobody had heard of Zoom, but today it's part of everybody's, life. We increasingly living in a heterogeneous society, right? So for all the unfortunate reasons, for all the wrong reasons, US has been in the news as part of racial tensions. But what we need to understand is, increasingly we are becoming more and more heterogeneous. So we've got different demographics, we've got different ethnicities, we've got different countries of origin, languages, educational background, financial background. We are becoming more heterogeneous than ever before. So that is going to drive new business models as well, right? So OEMs today are looking to offer customized solutions to different segments of the society. Now, if you look at the next set of mega trends that are likely to impact the automotive world, data. Data is the new oil, right? We've got tons of data that are being generated today through the cars, through the business models. How do you make sense out of it? This is where the ecosystem is developing, right? You've got the entire new startup ecosystem, which is into data analytics, that's going to work with the OEMs and suppliers to help make sense out of the data, right? And as we move towards 5G and 6G, we are quickly looking at a zero latency world, right? That means there will be a lot more data being transferred in real time without any lag. I mean, we have already had an example of a surgery being performed remotely using 5G data connectivity, right? It's only a matter of time before we see data, 5G data, and eventually 6G coming into cars and mobility as well. But last but not the least, a concept of a zero world. So what does a zero world mean? I mean, if you look at the automotive industry, we are, let's say, the most significant contributors to pollution, road deaths, and so on. We are looking at 150,000 deaths every year. That's a very, very significant number. So as we move towards a zero world, or concept of a zero world, we are looking at zero accidents, zero fatalities, zero pollution, zero emissions. So I think from the automotive perspective, these are the concept of a zero world is more important than ever before, and that is the core around which all technologies, all business models are being developed. So from the automotive industry ecosystems perspective, I think working towards a zero concept is going to be one of the key pillars, on which we will see a host of new technologies involving, advanced driver assistance systems, electrification, telematics, intelligent transportation systems being developed. Now, just taking a look at the Indian economy, obviously we have seen, lots of ups and downs over the past 25, 30 years. Unfortunately, the current situation we are in is one of the most severe ones, that we have faced in the recent past. But the good news is, we are already seeing, a recovery in India. So in the next quarter or two, we will see automotive companies restarting their operations, suppliers beginning to operate their plants, and so on. We have all heard about the Prime Minister's vision of a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Of course, this was a pre-COVID vision. Although the vision is still the same, I'm thinking it is going to be delayed by a year or two. But what is important is, going forward, states will drive economy, right? Maharashtra is expected to become the first $1 trillion economy by 2028 or 2030, right? Then Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, right? These are some of the states, Karnataka. So these are some of the states that will drive growth of economy, right? It's not one country as a whole, but we will have pockets and states driving economy. A subset of that, cities will start driving economy as well. Now, cities will become customers for technologies and business models. I mean, Surat, everybody knows Surat is the diamond capital of India, right? About 80% of the entire diamond business happens in India, happens in Surat. Bangalore, Hyderabad are the IT capitals in India, right? So all the IT infrastructure spending, IT technology investments are going to be driven by these two cities. Tirupur, everybody knows Tirupur as the textile capital of India, right? All investments in textile engineering, business models around textiles, natural fabrics, so on and so forth, will be concentrated or driven by Tirupur. So we will have cities driving new business models, driving investments in new technologies as we go forward. What is also becoming important is urbanization. So we will see a lot more mega regions in India. So we have seen the NCR space already becoming, a 30 million mega region. We will see similarly the merging of boundaries between Mumbai and Pune. Bangalore, Mysore is already going to become a mega region in the next 10 years. Chennai, of course. So urbanization and development of mega regions are also going to contribute significantly to the growth in economy. So with all the investments, infrastructure investment happening on corridors being developed. Let's say the classic example is the Mumbai-Delhi corridor, which is going to reduce travel time between Mumbai and Delhi by half, by 50%. In addition to that, we will see a lot of industries that are going to mushroom around this corridor that is going to drive investment, employment, and sustainable economy as well. Some of the key industries, high growth industries that we expect over the next 10 years is obviously e-commerce. Today with the likes of Flipkart, Amazon, we are seeing a lot more business that is happening. Even in COVID-19 situations, I think e-commerce was booming. So that is going to continue. Food delivery, right? The likes of Swiggy, Zomato, Uber Eats are going to drive a lot of investments as well. And they are going to have an impact on the automotive industry. You might wonder how. I'm going to talk about that in a minute from now. And last but not the least, wellness, right? I spoke about the convergence between the healthcare industry, the insurance industry, patient monitoring systems, and the automotive industry. So we will see a lot more convergence in that direction as well. So if you look at some of the global impact, as I said before, the next 3 or 4 quarters is going to be very, very critical. We do expect an upward swing, let's say by Q3 of 2020, that is the following quarter, but it will take another 3 quarters before we hit the pre-COVID situation, right? So the next, let's say 4 to 5 quarters will be an upward swing where we will start recovering. And by Q2 of 2021 or maybe Q3 of 2021, we will go back to our pre-COVID numbers. But what is also important is how the industries are evolving. So we did a bit of an analysis and we classified, we developed a matrix. So we classified them as 4 different industries. So you've got the moribund industries, where, these are the industries that have seen a huge downfall because of the COVID-19 situation or the COVID-19 pandemic. The travel, hospitality industry, the real estate industry, they are going to take a long time before, recovering, right? On the other hand, you've got the immortal industries, like healthcare services, telecom, digital payments and so on, which are, which have survived in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? I mean, the classic example, like I mentioned, is Zoom, which has actually seen a boom because of the COVID-19 situation. What is also classified as nirvana industries are those industries which have gained or benefited as a result of the COVID-19 situation. Education technologies, digital media, healthcare services. I mean, today, my daughter has already started, on her online classes. Her school has transitioned online. So it's been a couple of weeks now since she started taking classes online. So every morning for about 4 or 5 hours, she's online. So schools and educational technologies are increasingly leveraging the digital platform. So these are the industries called the nirvana industries that are actually benefiting in times of adversities, right? So I think we will have classification of industries, and each industry will have its own trajectory of recovery and growth going forward. Now, looking at the automotive industry, so this is a 20-year horizon, that we've developed. In the past 20 years, we have seen 3 dips, right? The first dip happened in 2001, 2002, where we recovered fairly quickly. And then we had the downward turn in 2008, 2009, where, some of the global automotive majors, Ford, GM, Chrysler, really struggled and found it hard to recover. So that was a bit of a stressful situation for many automotive companies, during the end of the last decade. And this time, we have seen the biggest drop, right? Unfortunately, the downward trend we are in now is nothing compared to the previous 2 or 3 dips we have seen. But the good news is the automotive industry is very resilient, right? We are very quick to bounce back. And, we will see, like I mentioned before, an upward swing in the next quarter, in the next 2 quarters. Of course, it will take another 3 or 4 quarters before we see 2018 or 2017 numbers. But nevertheless, the upward swing is going to start sooner than later. Now, some of the key trends that are driving the automotive industry is the marketplace, right? So today we've got Amazons, Facebooks, which are becoming marketplaces, right? So they are not just, social media platforms, but with or let's say through these social media platforms, all the companies you're talking about, FMCG companies, electronics companies, telecom operators, automotive companies, looking to leverage the marketplace, to promote their products. Amazon already has started their mobility business, so you can Amazon vehicles or Amazon cars, so you can actually buy cars on Amazon. So we are already looking at OEMs, who are investing or developing platforms to sell vehicles online, right? Some of the key sectors, or subsectors in the mobility industry that will see growth are, it's a little of a busy slide, but nevertheless, if you look at the first column on the left, that will give you a good idea, right? You've got shared mobility. Shared mobility, the Olas and Ubers, have been affected very badly because of the COVID-19 situation. They will take, another 3 to 6 months before they can recover. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, have seen a sustained growth. In spite of the COVID-19 slowdown, we have seen, let's say, electric two-wheelers, electric cars. The OEMs are still offering or going ahead with their plans to launch electric vehicles. So that is going to continue. Connectivity, right? Connected vehicles. Every OEM today who is launching a new model or a new car is offering them with connected features. The latest one is the Honda City, which was launched last week. The 5th generation Honda City, which is one of the most popular models in India, was launched last week in India, and it comes with a host of connectivity features. You can, with the help of an app on your phone, remotely unlock the car. You can start the car. You can start the air conditioning system. You can even open the boot lid. You say you've gone shopping, you've got a lot of bags in your hand. You can use the app, and through a voice command, you can open the boot. So these are the truly connected vehicles which are coming into the market, and we will see that they are going to bridge the gap between our personal life, which is already connected with the likes of mobile devices, handheld devices, the Alexas and Siris at homes. We are coming to an era where there is a seamless transition between our home personal life and our professional work life as well. And digital retail. Today, OEMs are very, very aggressive in offering their services online. I'm going to talk about a few examples, but gone are the days where automotive websites were just to browse models, look at specifications, and make comparisons. Today, you can actually customize, choose a vehicle, choose accessories, personalize them, customize them, choose a financial model, and even buy vehicles online. So I think that is where we are going towards. We will see these OEMs taking the digital platform a lot more seriously, because they understand, people are not really confident these days to walk into a showroom, touch and feel the vehicle, because there is always the fear of infection, the lack of social distancing. So the OEMs clearly understand that digital is the way to go, and that's clearly how the investments are looking at. And data is care delivery, right? And I spoke about this earlier as well. Today, just imagine, you have a medical condition, right? And you are driving, but your body vitals or vital functions of your body are constantly being monitored by your car through technologies that are integrated into the car. And this car is constantly sending updates to your personal physician, or let's say the hospital where your personal health records are stored. So the hospital actually knows before you when you will need emergency medical support, because your vitals are being monitored. So that means healthcare services can be made available to you at of you placing a request. So I think that is where the convergence is happening. And obviously, apart from the car manufacturers, you've got the hospitals, you've got your physicians, you've got the insurance companies as well. So it is an ecosystem. It's going to be based on a subscription model, needless to say. There will be sharing of revenues across all stakeholders. But the bottom line is, as a user, as a driver, you have access to not only mobility, but also there is a seamless integration between your car and your healthcare service providers and your general physicians. So I think that is where the future is. the healthcare industry and the automotive industry converging to offer services together. Now, with connectivity coming in, we are looking at three primary areas, right? You've got the built-in systems. That is, there is a SIM card embedded in your car, right? So through the car, it's already constantly communicating, for software updates, for new downloading of new features, electronic features, software updates, and so on. So you've got the built-in system, and then you've got the brought-in system, right? Through your wearables, it could be your smartphone, it could be your smartwatch. With mirroring, as part of the vehicle, you can actually communicate through your car system with the help of your wearables and personal devices. And then you've got the beamed-in system, which is cloud-enabled, right? So you don't need to have a built-in system there. You don't need to have a SIM card-enabled system, but it is connected to the cloud. So again, software updates are enabled by cloud systems. So these are different types of platforms that are being used to offer services to the customer. Like I said, healthcare services, software services, marketplace. You can actually, let's say, for example, you're driving and you can place an order through your car, place an order for groceries, say, hey, Alexa, why don't you place an order for a dozen eggs and a packet of milk for me, right? And when you reach home, it's already delivered to your doorstep. Or say, hey, Alexa, why don't you book an service appointment for me for next Saturday? So it automatically goes to the service center and an appointment is booked. And if there is a need for a part to be replaced, the service center already knows through the connected system that, okay, your brake pads need replacement, or brake rotors need replacement, or there's an oil change due. So I think connected systems will become a lot more prevalent, and we will see connectivity driving new business models in the automotive system. Food delivery, like I said, very, very important. The food delivery market in the next 5 years is expected to be a $200 billion market, right? Up from about $80 billion in 2018. So very clearly, the automotive industry is also going to be impacted, because a lot of these food delivery companies employ electric two-wheelers. So the fleet electric two-wheelers are going to be the early adopters, and even light commercial vehicles where there is, let's say, transferring or transportation of food or ingredients, let's say, between cities, or even from cloud kitchens, from various cloud kitchens, or between restaurants and delivery points. So food delivery market is also going to have a significant impact on the mobility industry. We will see a lot more electric two-wheelers, electric commercial vehicles, light commercial vehicles, electric three-wheelers being adopted by these companies. Now, again, electric vehicles, we do expect a healthy growth for electric vehicle sales in the next couple of quarters. We see recovery from the COVID-19 already. Some of the OEMs have been very, very optimistic about their electric vehicle plans, and they clearly understand that for the long term, electric vehicles still offer the best possible solution in terms of a clean environment, a low cost of operation, low TCO, and fantastic mileage. I mean, if you look at the latest launch from Tesla launched their latest Model S, which has a range of 650 kilometers on a single charge and has a 0 to 100 time of 2.3 seconds, right? So you have a combination of supercar performance and at the same time the mileage of let's say a Maruti 800 or a Maruti Alto, right? So even better than that, today there is no IC engine vehicle, petrol or diesel, that offers a 650 kilometer range on a single tank, right? Today you have an electric vehicle doing that already, and the supercar performance in terms of acceleration and power output. So gone are the days when we were in a situation where you had to have either one or the other, right? If you had high top class performance, you compromised on mileage. If you had great mileage, you compromised on performance. But not anymore. With the electric vehicle, you can have the best of both worlds. I think that is what people are also beginning to understand, that the opportunities in electric vehicles are definitely long term. They give you the flexibility, software updates, over the air updates, and you always have the best combination of performance, space, fuel economy. It's not fuel anymore. but low cost of ownership as well. Now, we talk about autonomous driving, right? Autonomous vehicles. So, of course, we are still a long time away before we are going to see any autonomous vehicles in India. But nevertheless, the global market is moving towards autonomous vehicles. Again, Tesla is experimenting heavily on this. So the way we see how these are going to evolve is on 3 platforms. So the electric vehicle platform or the vehicle platform, which is the base, will get standardized. That means all your electric motors, batteries, suspension technologies, steering systems, they will all be standard, and will be shared across OEMs. Today, the OEMs like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi are coming together. Ford, Mahindra, Maruti, Suzuki, they're all coming together to develop electric platforms. So that is going to become standard. On top of that, we'll say the electronic platform, right? So here you will have all the ECUs, cyber security modules, controllers, and so on and so forth, right? So they will form the electronic platform, which will sit on the mechanical platform. The third platform will be the digital platform. So here you've got all your software integration, IoTs, infotainment systems, customization, personalization, HMI, and so on and so forth. So this is where the OEMs will, achieve differentiation or top hat differentiation. So your base electric platform will be the same. The electronic platform is going to be common across, let's say, different segments. The digital platform can be fully customized. So you've got, let's say, touch screens in your vehicle. They can be personalized according to your taste, your preferences, lighting systems, seating arrangements, your music. Everything can be personalized on the digital platform. So that is where the OEMs will start offering, let's say, value-added services on the digital platform. So this is how the autonomous driving platforms will look like in the future. Now, if you look at the Indian market, right, and how we are expected to see recovery, like I said before, we do expect the festive season in September, October, to see to witness a spike in sales because all the pent-up demand we have seen over the past months. And the OEMs are also a little optimistic of clocking a little more sales than they have done before. But nevertheless, this year is still going to be about 17.5% down from the last year, which already was 18% down from 2019. So both these years are going to have been very tough years for the automotive industry. But we do expect FY22, to see a recovery. So by FY22 and maybe FY23, we will go back to FY18 numbers. So I think we have been set back by about 3 to 4 years. The automotive industry has been set back by 3 to 4 years. But nevertheless, as the saying goes, when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up, right? So that's what we are expecting in the next couple of months. Now, states, like I said before, states are going to see different kinds of recovery. We expect East India to recover the quickest because if you see the red, green, and orange zones, East India had the least number of red zones, right? So we expect that to recover much faster. Then we see North and South zones recovering. West zone is going to be, in our opinion, the slowest to recover because Maharashtra, Gujarat have been really badly affected. So we expect them to be a little slow in recovery. Unfortunately, Tamil Nadu is also among one of the worst affected states, and Karnataka seems to be slowly catching up. So the next, I think, 3 to 4 weeks are going to be very, very challenging, from a variety of perspectives. But it's in our interest that we take all the necessary precautions to ensure we don't contribute to the numbers. Like I said before, some of the OEMs are already looking to leverage the digital media. The best example here is Hyundai. So Hyundai has launched the Click to Buy platform where you can actually buy a car. So you can go to Hyundai's Click to Buy website. You can choose a model. You can choose the variant. You can choose the accessories, personalize it. Choose a finance plan, whether, what kind of down payment you want to make, who should be your loan provider, financial supporter, everything, and you can actually make the purchase online. The car will be delivered to your home. So, we have had almost all the OEMs extending their service warranties. offering free services at their doorstep, pickup and drop facilities, and some of the OEMs and two-wheeler OEMs too, electric vehicle two-wheeler OEMs are also offering the buy online facilities. And again, what is also important is the messaging, right? Today, all the OEMs, that is Toyota, Tata Motors, Maruti, have put that message out, to the customers that, hey, we are with you. We support you in these challenging times, in terms of free service, warranty extensions, a moratorium for EMI payments. So I think these are definitely steps in the right direction that will help build customer sentiment, most importantly, right? What is also very important is the growth of the pre-owned vehicle market in India, or the used car market in India. By 2025, we expect the used car market to be 2x the new car market, right? Almost double the new car market. So driven by a variety of factors, the used car market in India is being driven by tier 2, tier 3 cities, or the upcountry markets, right? Because we have a lot of new generation vehicles that are being, put into the used car market. So the customers who are looking for used vehicles already have a very good option, choice of vehicles, relatively newer vehicles, right? The OEMs themselves are offering certified used car programs. It started off with Maruti's True Value almost 20 years ago. Today, every OEM in India has a certified used car program. So that means there's a lot more credibility in the market. There's a lot more transparency. The stigma associated with the used car, which was there, let's say 10 years ago, if you bought a used car, the perception was that, oh, you can't afford a new car, so you bought a used car. That's not there anymore, right? You've got new generation vehicles, with warranty, with OEM support and backing. So the used car market is going to be very, very attractive. And most importantly, the profitability or the margins are higher in the used car market. So from the OEM's perspective as well, or even in the business investment perspective, the used car market is going to be one of the high growth areas. Connected vehicles, as I said, a lot of OEMs today are offering connected cars or connected vehicles with a variety of features. You've got the classic example is MG. When MG launched the MG Hector, their tagline was internet inside. So very clearly they were focusing on the connectivity of the vehicle. I spoke to you about Honda City being launched with connected vehicle features. Similarly, Nissan, Kia, Hyundai, they're all launching connected vehicles. So it's just a matter of time before we see all new vehicles that are going to be launched in the Indian market will be connected, right? So at various levels of connected vehicle features, but nevertheless, they will all be connected vehicles. Digital retail, again, very important. Example here is of MG, because MG has launched a digital flagship store where it's a very small store and with a lot of screens and touch screen HMI systems there. So there are no physical models, but at the same time, you can browse through different variants, color options, customize it, through the digital concept. And you can do this online as well and have the vehicle sent to your doorstep for a test drive, and you can make a choice. So you actually don't have to visit the dealership or the showroom at all. Maybe once to sign some papers or to actually submit some documentation if there is a need, something like that. But today, the need to physically visit the showroom multiple times is eliminated because of the digital retail format that every OEM is adopting. What is also important is the digital platforms that are in the aggregator space, third-party aggregator space. Droom is a wonderful example here. So till very recently, Droom was a platform where you could compare vehicles, whether they are new cars or used cars, and you could get connected to the nearest retailer. But today, Droom is offering, as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, they're offering sanitization services, right? So they'll come to your doorstep, sanitize the vehicle for you, and make it roadworthy. So we have third-party aggregators who are stepping up, who are using the situation to offer new services, new value-added services that can be leveraged on the digital platform by the OEMs and suppliers. Now here is a wonderful example of a multi-brand retail concept in India. If you have the time, you can go and look up www.nayagadi.com. So nayagadi.com is a very unique concept where the idea is to take the dealership experience to the customer's doorstep. Especially in rural India or in villages, right? In villages, there are no showrooms, right? So if a customer wants to buy a vehicle, he or she has to travel to the nearest town, the nearest city to visit the dealership. But with this concept, the idea is to take the dealership experience to the customer's doorstep. What is also very important, if you look at this picture, it is a multi-segment concept. That means you can buy a two-wheeler, you can buy a three-wheeler, you can buy a passenger car, you can also buy a light commercial vehicle, right? So you've got multi-segment model here and a multi-brand model, right? It is brand agnostic, whether you want to buy a Maruti Suzuki or a Renault or a Mahindra, Tata Motors, anything, right? So it's a multi-brand, multi-segment, concept with the offerings or with additional features such as finance support. They'll arrange for loans for you. They'll connect you with the nearest banks, to help you get financial support, so on and so forth. So very clearly, it's a very unique, innovative concept which eliminates the need to have significant investments in a brick and mortar showroom, right? With this model, you don't need huge spaces where you have to showcase 4, 5, 6 cars. You're looking at an 8,000, 10,000 square feet area. You don't need that anymore. So with this, you're very agile, you're asset light, and you're able to take the experience to the customer's doorstep. And that is going to be the driver in India. So to summarize, what is very important in India is the growth of e-commerce, which is driving a lot of new business models. With the Amazons, Flipkarts being able to sell automotive components and and tires. Another classic example, there are multiple online tire players today where you can go online, choose the tire you want, buy it, and it will get delivered to your doorstep, or it will get delivered to your nearest fitment center, and you go straight to the fitment center, get it fitted, and come back. What is also happening is a lot of downstream consolidation. A lot of the smaller independent distributors and retailers are finding it difficult to survive because of the current situation. They are being either acquired or taken over by the larger distribution houses, the national or regional distribution houses. They are investing in the smaller ones. This way, they can help them survive. It is also sustainable in the long term. And for the larger distributors, it gives them access to regions they had no access to before, right? So that's again a very, very important trend. Localization, of course, with the Make in India push, there's a lot more investment, happening in manufacturing components, electric vehicle components, electronics components in India. Today we already are looking at moving away from our dependency on China. So in the next 5-6 years are going to be very exciting, where we will see a lot more smaller MSMEs, small component manufacturers stepping up and developing capabilities. And last but not the least, the transition from a CapEx model to an OpEx model, right? Every stakeholder in the automotive industry wants to become asset light, right? They don't want to be burdened with the huge costs of owning assets. So, which is why we see that the vehicle subscription models, right, are becoming very popular. That means you don't buy and own vehicles anymore, but based on a subscription model, you can pick up any model you want, use it for a month, give it back, take a different model, use it, and go give it back. So in India, Maruti, Hyundai, Mahindra are already partnering with third-party providers like Rev, Zoomcar, Miles to offer subscription services. Short-term leasing is also becoming popular, right? When we say leasing, typically it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year leasing. But for short-term leasing, we are looking at 1 month or maybe even 1 quarter. So that way, it's a lot more flexible. It gives customer the option to pick and choose what kind of vehicles they want, change it whenever they want. So the future of the mobility industry in India is very bright. What is going to drive the mobility industry is an ecosystem model, right? It is not just the car manufacturer and the supplier anymore. We will see a lot more industry players coming in, like I said, insurance companies, healthcare service providers, telecom operators, right? Today, the likes of, Vodafone, Airtel are very interested in connected vehicles, because once connected vehicles become more and more prevalent, they will have a role to play as well with 5G connectivity, 6G connectivity, and so on. So it's going to be a very, very exciting ecosystem, the mobility ecosystem, with new business models like shared mobility and electrification driving the growth. So with that, I'm going to conclude my talk. Dr. PM, I'm going to hand it back to you. We can happy to take questions from the audience, and I'll try my best to answer them.
Oh, thanks a lot, Kaushik. That was a fantastic presentation. First of all, thanks to you. You've given a positive note that in next 2 to 3 quarters, it is going to the market is going to grow, and we'll be back into business quickly. Even if you see a couple of months, like May itself, Hyundai sold almost 12,500 vehicles in India, and in June they sold almost 28,000. In India alone, 24,000. So almost they doubled it. So that itself shows that people are fighting back quickly and started buying it. And Maruti has recorded 52,000 cars sold in the month of June.
Fantastic, okay. Yeah.
Last year, the same month, they did about 1.1 lakh. But still, though it is 50%, but at least they've started selling so much. 50,000 people have bought the car. That's a good thing. You also added to that positive feeling. Thanks a lot. And if you permit me to share my screen.
Please go ahead, sir.
You have to
stop sharing. Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. There are a few questions from the chat box. Folks, please hold on for some time. There are some questions sent by people, so we'll first read that. Then we'll come back to your questions. Please mute your mic, yeah, please. Yeah, Mr. J.K. Menon, who is the CEO and Executive Director of Minda Group, asked a question. You want me to read it or you can answer it?
No, I can read that. What's the potential upside in the sentiment of avoiding public transport in favor of personal vehicles, right? Yeah, that's true. I think they're already seeing that. There is a fear of infection, fear of lack of social distancing in shared mobility and even public transport. So we do expect, at least in the next 2 to 3 months, a small upward trend, especially in two-wheelers, number one, and entry-level passenger cars, right? Your entry-level hatchbacks and entry-level sedans, they will sell more than your upper segment vehicles. What is also important to note is, although we are expecting to see a recovery and sales of the entry-level two-wheelers and passenger vehicles, bear in mind, this is also the segment that has been affected the most, right? A lot of people have lost their jobs. They have had salary cuts to the tune of 20, 30. I know of people, of my friends and colleagues, who have had a 50% salary cut. So although there is a pent-up demand, also there is a trend towards buying personal vehicles. They're also constrained financially, right? So I think it's a bit of a contradicting situation, but I'm pretty confident that, at least for the short to medium term, we'll see an upward swing. But of course, in the long term, it's very clear, shared mobility will be the only way forward. But it will take a little while before shared mobility comes back.
Thanks, Mr. Menon is an IITian and my favorite boss, and also an automotive veteran. Jay Krishnan from France, he's working for Nissan Europe headquarters. He asked the question, what is the possibility of transitioning the career from automotive industry to management consulting?
Right. So I think he's already
We
indirectly.
are all examples actually.
Yeah, exactly. So I was about to say that. So I think this is a very good transition, I would say. So you see, for us from management consulting perspective, the automotive industry experience is a great value add, because I myself spent a couple of years with Nissan India. So I can relate to my experience from the OEM days, that I can leverage and add value when I'm working on consulting projects. So it is definitely useful. Although there is no time, where I can say, hey, this is the right time to move. It always depends on your personal interests. You want to spend a few years with or in the automotive industry, gain experience, gain knowledge and expertise that you can leverage in the consulting space. But yes, this is definitely one of the most attractive areas to transition from the automotive industry to the consulting space.
Let's go to the next one. There are a few questions asked by Mr. Atul Vij. Atul Vij is one of our director based at Delhi. Mr. Edward John, can you please mute your mic, please? They want to watch news while he's putting the mic on. Okay. You can choose any question you would like to see, and then.
Right. So let me take a quick look at that. Shifted towards cloud. Yes. So I think that is a point I touched upon earlier as well. The new business model going forward is going to be an asset light model, right? So he has also spoken about hiring part-time staff versus full-time resources. Yes, I mean it's a judgment call. There is no one hat fits all solution here. Depending on what industry you're in, what kind of service industry you are in, you will need to make a call in terms of what kind of strength you need to have. But of course, this COVID-19 situation has actually been a wake-up call for many of the industries. They have shed excess fat, and we are somehow surviving. It's close to 3.5 months since I started working from home, and now we've gotten used to it, right? So going forward, a lot of companies, software companies especially, are mulling permanent work from home concepts for their employees, right? So I think there will be a completely different way office space is going to be structured. Real estate for office space is going to be completely different. We will not need as many workstations or full-fledged resources, huge floor space, and so on and so forth. I think going forward, everything will be asset light. Now, other point which he has asked, how COVID-19 has changed customer requirements, right? Very clearly, the customers are looking at digital aspects more closely than ever before. Not only for new vehicle sales, but also, today medicine, education technologies are transitioning online. So I think the online digital space will become a lot more integral to our lives than ever before. And that is how we see going forward. So physical in combination with the digital is what we call as the phygital concept. So the phygital concept is going to become sustainable, and that is going to be adopted by all industries.
Oh, excellent. Even TCS has recently announced they are targeting 30% office space reduction in next 2 years' time.
Right.
So I hope the real estate is not going to be so lucrative for people who want to earn from rent. Okay, Dr. Bala has asked a question. He is the CEO of Vision Unlimited and also our strategic partner. The norms of the government restrict the number of people inside the factory. In that case, how companies can achieve their business goals and targets?
Yeah, I think this is a difficult question to answer. I agree. Because of the current situation, the government has been very vocal in saying, you need to maintain that social distancing. But the way I look at it, I think it's going to be a temporary affair. I think the companies, especially the manufacturing industry, needs to manage its workforce a little better a little more efficiently, I would say, they might need to look at additional ways of supplementing their revenues and supplementing their income, or increase the number of shifts, or improve efficiency, or look at it as the right time to invest in IoT solutions, right? So solutions,
low cost automation are like that.
exactly. So low cost automation, agile manufacturing or flexible manufacturing, IoT solutions. You see, with these, you are not compromising on productivity, but at the same time, you're reducing manpower as well. So I think this could be the right time to make those investments.
Thanks. So we'll go to the next one. Mr. Enes Sohel is a Group Vice President of Finance Industries, Bangalore. His question is, the voluminous middle class was moving away from private ownership vehicles to shared rides or hired trips from Ola, Uber. So much so that auto OEMs were lobbying hard for compulsory scrapping of vehicles more than 10 years old. Will the highly contagious nature of viral diseases force people back to private ownership of vehicles, thus driving the car OEM fortunes?
Yeah, so I think I touched upon this as well earlier very briefly. For the short to medium term, yes, I would say yes, because there is a pent-up demand, number one, and there is also the trend towards owning a personal vehicle. But my gut feeling is that this is going to be restricted to the entry-level segments, right? People in the upper segment or the luxury segment, they were not affected by COVID-19, at least financially. So their spending habits are not likely to change. It is the section of the society which used shared mobility, which used public transport, will now prefer to use a private vehicle. But in the long term, once this situation gets ironed out, once either COVID-19 becomes a part of our life, or we have found a vaccine or some way to live with it, shared mobility will come back.
True. Mr. Nitin Sheshatri is the Managing Director of ST Auto Pressings, Hosur. Over the past few years, there had been a perceptible shift in ownership pattern of cars. I think he's talking about the same.
Yes.
Post-COVID, many speculate that this trend may halt and or even reverse due to safety concerns.
Correct.
Do you see this happening? If so, would this be merely a temporary blip? I think you answered it. More or less.
Yes.
Okay. I think this is the last question what we received. Kindly throw light on the scrapping policy Indian government is planning to bring.
Yeah, I think this is again a very interesting policy. It's a long overdue policy that we needed to have in India. Now, of course, the government is very clear. We have already seen the banning of 15-year-old diesel vehicles, 15-year-old vehicles and 10-year-old diesel vehicles in NCR region, driven by the NGT, National Green Tribunal. I think we will see a nationwide policy very soon. But what is important is that this has to be a holistic approach. So that means, on the one hand, you have to have a scrappage policy, no doubt, that is very clear in terms of what are the conditions under which the vehicle will be scrapped. It could be a combination of age, service history, fuel type, blah, blah, blah. But what is also very important is there is a need to set up the scrappage ecosystem or the recycling ecosystem, right? So what do you do with the vehicles that come into scrappage, right? How do you extract metals, right? How do you extract different materials? So in a car, you've got plastics, you've got rubber, you've got metal, you've got electronics, you've got a variety of things, sensors, so on and so forth. So there needs to be a comprehensive policy which will address each of these elements, because the recycling for each of them is very different. So when you scrap these vehicles, you can't have just make a scrappage policy and leave it to the state governments to tackle it, right? There have to be investment scrappage plants, right? Recovery plants. So what do you do with the metal? How do you smelt it? How do you recover electronic components? Electronic waste management or e-waste management. So I think it has to be a holistic policy, and only then it will work. But there are already steps in that direction. Yeah.
Hey, Kaushik, I'm just looking at the chat box. A lot of appreciation for your presentation. You've done a great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
There are a few questions also, but some of the questions you already answered. So I'm just looking for questions where you're not yet touched upon in yours. Okay, one is, how can basic subscription service model of cars be cost efficient for manufacturers and dealers? You touched upon it, but if you would like to explain?
Sorry, what was the question again, sir?
How can basic subscription service model of cars be cost efficient for manufacturers and dealers?
Right. So, I mean, if you look at it, it's all got to do with the holding pattern, right? The average holding time for a personal vehicle in India is anywhere between 5 to 8 years, right? At least the first life. Then it goes into second life and then third life applications. So if you look at the shared mobility, the replacement cycles are much quicker. So in a shared mobility, or let's take even your normal taxis, right? They get their lifetime, their first cycle lifetime is 2 to 3 years, because so they get replaced much quicker. So from the dealership and the car manufacturer's perspective, yes, there will be a downward trend in private or personal ownership, but there will be an upward trend in shared mobility simply because of quicker replacement cycles. Now that also has an impact on the service, after sales and service industry as well. So they have these vehicles clock more mileage, they come into service more frequently, parts replacement is more frequent. So it has a cascading effect on a lot of factors. So I don't think the OEMs need to be worried about vehicle sales just because there is a transition from private ownership to subscription-based ownership. It does not matter.
Okay, one question is, what is your perception on humans relying upon products such as Alexa and other technological hands-free or wireless devices? How reliable do you think AI can be in the future? I think that's the future.
I agree. See, I personally believe you can never replace the human mind, right? So the only positive side is that we can free up the human mind to look at something more creative. You know, when I say more creative, it could be art, it could be new business models, new technologies, new ideas, and so on and so forth. The mundane, repetitive things, will be taken care of by artificial intelligence, right? All your calculations, whatever it may be, that does not require any intelligence from the human side will be taken care of by artificial intelligence and, the likes of Siri, Alexa, blah, blah, blah. So we can free up our minds to more creative thinking and new models. And that is how I look at it.
Good perception or good view. How do you see export opportunities to replace Chinese market or China market in India?
Yes, I mean, so some of the OEMs are already looking at, see, this has got to do a lot with the diversification. So from the OEM's perspective, they're already looking at de-risking their supply chain, de-risking their sourcing strategies. So they are now not dependent on one supplier for a part. So you've got multiple suppliers for the same part. So with the focus away from China, they are looking at sourcing the same part either from Indian companies or let's say European companies or other Asia Pacific countries. So I think that is going to be the way forward. So it's all about de-risking your sourcing strategy and decentralizing it as well. So you've got multiple suppliers for the same part, and that's the only way forward.
Okay, one more. We can spend 10 more minutes now, Kaushik.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Will electric vehicle proliferation benefits will be limited to vehicle manufacturers, or will it benefit electrical consultants and contractors down the line?
No, absolutely, it's going to benefit everyone. In fact, in addition to what you mentioned, the OEMs, contractors, and so on, you have the charging infrastructure providers, right? You've got new business model operators like battery swapping, for example. Then third one, you've got energy storage companies, right? Today, the batteries that come out of the electric vehicles after their first life are used in energy storage applications. It could be UPS for homes or telecom tower applications, grid support applications, so on and so forth. So, and then you've got insurance companies, telecom players, IoT companies. So it's a huge ecosystem, and everybody is going to benefit. So at the end of the day, we are talking about energy management. So it is not just electric vehicles, component manufacturers, or the electric companies. It's all about energy management. So everybody is going to be a part of this ecosystem.
Okay, one very tricky question. what are the top 3 aspects to be looked into to be competitive to China auto manufacturing costs?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think it's all going to revolve around reskilling. Today, if you look at the automotive industry, the OEMs, the associations like SIAM, ACMA are already coming towards developing a comprehensive reskilling roadmap. I don't know if many of you have heard about this. So we have this council called the Automotive Skill Development Council, ASDC. So ASDC is working very closely with the government authorities and the OEMs and the associations to develop programs for reskilling. So I think that's the only way we'll be able to compete with China, right? Obviously, we don't have the volumes like China has. We'll never have volumes comparable to China in the near future. So I don't think we're competing on volumes at all. But we should be competing on value-added services. We should be competing on low-cost applications that are designed, developed, and manufactured in India. And that's the only way we can compete. Not on volumes, not on commodity, but on value addition and technologies.
Okay, one question is, do you think this improvement initiatives like lean or productivity improvements have to be applied in office work like design, marketing, services, etc., to service the customers better?
Oh, I'm afraid, Dr. PM, I'm not the right person to answer that. I have very little knowledge on lean manufacturing and Six Sigma and everything. So
maybe I would answer it. I would answer it. When Mr. Ranga Iyengar asked it, he also knows me. Ranga sir, this lean concept can be applied anywhere. As back as 1997, I have done a lean study for an open heart surgery, and I brought the 7 hours operation to 4.5 hours. So when you can do for an open heart surgery, I think you can do it for any process. Any activity you do is a process. Any process can be improved. So that's a philosophy of lean. So it is definitely possible. And one Mr. Ponusamy from Renault Nissan, probably your ex-colleague, he says, thanks, Kaushik, for enlightening inputs. Okay. Most of the industries depends on migrant employees, how their skills will be addressed. I think it's a tough situation. Most of them are migrant employees, no doubt. But at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of the stakeholders in the ecosystem. When I say stakeholders, I'm talking about the automotive companies, the suppliers, the dealerships, the retailers, whoever are their employers. I think it is their responsibility to train them, to skill them. But at the same time, what is also important is going forward, we need to see a lot more industry academia collaboration. We have to train and develop the capabilities at the grassroots level, right? Not after they come out of the institutions. Even before they come out, we need to prepare them for the industries. The curriculum also needs to be updated. There needs to be a lot more industry-focused curriculum integrated into the coursework. And for that to happen, there are already good examples. IIT Madras is the best example, right? Where you see a lot of academia collaboration. We need to take that to all the institutions across the country. That's the only way we can train the manpower right from the beginning. We can take 3-4 more questions and then close it, Kaushik. Concerning the India-China situation in the global market, what are the top 3 industries will boom in India? An added question to that is, how are we going to be affected by the Indo-China war situation?
I think I believe based on the latest news, there have been negotiations between the
talks going on. Yeah.
So talks are going on. So hopefully that situation will be diffused soon. I don't see that as a long-term challenge. Sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Three major industries which can gain from this situation.
If you ask me, the 3 main industries, are the telematics space, nevertheless, because a lot more investments are happening in telematics space, connectivity, and electrification. These are the 3 or 4 areas that I see are high growth areas in India.
Okay, and one last question. Will the cluster approach help in the days to come, or consortium effect will come? Will be better. Yeah.
Yeah, I personally believe the consortium effort will be better because with the consortium effort, it is bringing in all the ideas together to a common platform, right? So it is not, I don't think we'll be able to survive in silos anymore. So we have to collaborate, we have to work together. And that's the only way the new business models are surviving, right? So, I mean, the classic example is just 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to a couple of Japanese conglomerates, Sumitomo, Mitsui, and so on, right? So these companies 10, 15 years ago, they had no direct relationship with the automotive industry, right? Of course, they still manufactured motors, control systems, and so on. But cars per se, they had no direct contact. But today, they are realizing that with electric vehicles coming in, they are going to become a key stakeholder in electric mobility, because they manufacture electric motors, battery systems, charging infrastructure, and so on. So that's the only way forward, a collaborative ecosystem and a consortium, because you have to pull in your ideas and share your expertise. That's the only way we will develop a new business models.
Okay, Dr. Pierre Mohammed is there from Saudi Arabia. He's been raising his hand for quite some time. Doctor, if you are there, you can ask directly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Very nice, vivid, interesting, and informative presentation. Excellent. Thanks
you,
to both of you.
Appreciate
Yeah. My question is, you told about the Nirvana Industries. You know, it's rising online education. Okay, that's true. You are right. But the problem is the young children, our kids, they have tender eyes. So sitting for 5-6 hours, now they have a forced education, and it's a real problem, health problem for our children. There is a lot of controversy going on, and we cannot ignore this. And what is your opinion about that?
No, you are absolutely right, sir. You know, it is correct. You know that sustained long exposure to computer screens can have a detrimental effect on young children. I think it is our responsibility, you know, to arrange a course curriculum such that you give constant breaks. You know, I'll take my own daughter's example. For every 45 minutes of class, she has a 15-minute break, right? So she is never sitting in front of the computer for more than 45 to 50 minutes at a stretch. So the course material has to be designed in such a way that you take this into account and give sufficient time for the child to maybe take a break, walk around, you know, in the house and come back and sit. That's number one. Number two, I mean, it's very new to these children as well. So you cannot expect that level of concentration over sustained periods of time, right? I mean, we have been working in front of computers in our professional lives for many years, so we can sit for 1, 2, 3 hours. But for expecting that from children is a lot. So you need to design the coursework such that you give sufficient gaps, sufficient breaks, so that they can rest their eyes and rest their minds and, you know, stay afresh. I think that's the only way to do it. And of course, not to forget, the teachers themselves have to change their way of teaching, right? Classroom teaching is very different from online teaching. So they need to be more interactive. They have to involve the children, you know, make them feel a part of it, because they are not physically sitting in front of them, you know, and you can never read expressions on a small computer screen where only it's a 1 square inch where your face is visible. So I think it's a responsibility of the educational institutions to take care of this.
Yeah, I have one question from my side, Kaushik. See, I've been doing a small research on these electric vehicles. If you see the TCO, the total cost of ownership, if we take a similar size of the car, a similar kind of the car, let's say a fossil fuel car and an electrical car, the price itself is almost, you know, 2 times or at least 60-70% more than the fossil fuel car. Then after 2-3 years, you know, or after so many kilometers of running, you need to change the battery. The basic difference between a fossil fuel car and this itself is because of the battery price, correct? And though there is a very, very little running cost, if you actually see over a period of, let's say, 3 years of owning a car, the electric car seems to be at least 30 to 40% more expensive than a fossil fuel car. Do you expect this car price going to come down in the near future? Otherwise, it is long run, electric car may not do well.
It is already happening, sir. It is already happening. You know, I'll give you an example. So there are two ways of looking at it. One is a new business model where the battery becomes a subscription service. So battery as a service is called BaaS. Battery as a service means you take the cost of the battery out of the equation, right? In an electric vehicle, battery costs about 40 to 45%, right? So if you take that out of the equation, suddenly the electric car is very similarly priced to an IC engine car. So that's number one. Now the battery technologies have evolved, you know, so drastically that we are already looking at 8 years of application and 100,000 kilometers of application for the battery. So 8 years is typically more than the average first life holding time of a car, right? So we are already having a situation, you know, especially with the likes of Hyundai, Tesla, and so on. They are offering batteries for 8 years. So I think it's just a matter of time before we will see batteries that will last 12, 13 years. They will outlast the life of the car. So I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Oh, so that's very encouraging. Okay. So before we propose vote of thanks and formally close it, can you quickly say your closing remarks? A few points if you want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the questions that were asked, you know, are very, very relevant, especially for the Indian industry. So two things are very clear. One is there is a need to develop a collaborative ecosystem. You know, we cannot work in individual silos anymore. And for that to happen, it's very important that the ecosystem stakeholders come together, either, you know, like somebody mentioned, in the form of a consortium, or develop an ecosystem where you can share ideas and develop new business models. That's number one. Number two, the customer behavior is changing. It is not our traditional purchase and ownership model anymore. They don't want to be burdened with vehicles anymore. So going forward, the business models will revolve around customer preferences. Now, the customer preferences will change by age group, by demographics, by educational background, by financial background, by multiple factors. So the business model needs to be agile and flexible enough to cater to a wide set of customer requirements. And that's the only way everybody will survive. So, like I said, to summarize two areas, new business models from the OEMs in the form of a collaborative ecosystem, and adapting to changing customer behavior to offer new value-added services. So these two will form the bedrock of the mobility industry going forward.
Thank you, Kaushik. So few people could not attend because they said it's their working time. Is it okay? We put it in our YouTube and send the link to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do. Please do.
Okay. Thank you. Atulji, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, sir.
Please, sir. Please propose vote of thanks, sir.
Thanks, Kaushik ji. You have introduced several things together in just a small span of time. We always, all humankind has an enigma to know more about the future. And your topic is such, it relates more to the future. But the way you have linked how we have drawn learnings from the past across industry, you have, I think, shown span of about, I think, 80 years or so from back. So it was a very good thing to understand. And the way you have actually explained, it's not the necessity is the mother of invention. You are actually saying it's necessity plus excellence is the need of invention. So this was a very different perspective to look at things. It's not that what the customers are saying. You're also saying, okay, how the process can be made more excellent, the de-skilling, etc., technology coming in, the business models changing, to introduce a lot more of excellence aspect into it. This was very interesting. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks, Dr. Bala, and thanks, Dr. Raja. Thanks, Meghanathan ji.
Thank you, Atulji. Nice of you to join today. Kaushik, thanks a lot. It was a very, very energizing session. As usual, you know, whenever I meet you, I always get energized. You know, I'm sure today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the kind words.
Around 90 people, attended. You know, maybe few have gone out now. It went up to 90, and about 150 odd people have registered. So I want to send it to all of them. So probably they could not attend. So thanks a lot, and let's keep doing this kind of service to the country and to the people. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks all the participants. You know, you people have made it
so
very successful.
You know, I'm thankful to you. Yeah.
My pleasure, sir. Thank you so much. Bye bye. See you guys. Bye bye.
Thank you.